Thank you. I think we'd like to share screen, and we have a presentation that we're going to kind of walk us through with some ideas. So, Brother Zahir, you want to, is that available to you?
I believe so. Bismillah.
So we realize that everyone is preparing for an uncertain school year. And, I want to say, first of all, Assalamu alaikum to all of you, parents, community members, and we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us beneficial knowledge. I think this is something you can read and think about for the moment as we begin to get into the meat. We have an agenda here, but we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help and guide us, make our words beneficial to you. So we have a survey that we've got some ideas about what you're doing, but we think we know that you have some choices to make. You have to decide whether your children are going to go online or go face-to-face. So the second part and the third part were to think about how you make those decisions. You want to go back to that one before that? I think that, we're in uncharted territory for sure. And parents are in kind of a predicament because of the back and forth decisions that we've been seeing, not just across the country, but across the world. I'm honored, and I know Brother Zahir is too, to be here with you today and to help you think about these choices, because I think that, yes, we're in a pandemic, but also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us an opportunity. And as we think about those difficult decisions and that opportunity, I view this as a situation that if we think through it carefully, it could change our families as well. It could change how we view a lot of things. Now, maybe some families will embrace that more wholeheartedly than others. Maybe some are still afraid of that concept. But that's just, kind of an opening thought for you to think about as we go through the considerations and the difficult decision, what the options are, and then, we'll have Q&A. So next slide. I think that even one more than that, maybe. Unless, do you want to do the Menti, brother? Is that the right time for the Menti?
I think that Sister Mariam shared it, so if anyone wants, they can either use that or the chat.
Right. So if you have questions, I think just put them in the chat.
Sounds good.
So what we've understood, and this is happening in Chicago, this is happening in California, this is happening East Coast, West Coast, wherever we look, we're making this decision a lot of times suddenly, whether we want to send our children on site to the school where we're hearing that there'll be masks and social distancing, or whether we want to take our children, keep them at home and do an online version. Now remember that most of us had that experience in the spring. There should be, however, a big difference between an emergency program that was put together in the spring, in March and April, and the kind of program that schools would put together for you now after having the summer there. So some of the considerations that we want to be very upfront about is obviously the quality of academic instruction is going to be important to you. The physical health and safety, are we going to be exposed, is going to be important. Do we have, senior members of our family living at home? Even they say things about children are not carriers, or they are carriers at certain ages. That's a challenge. And then our own family stability relating the children's, schooling option that we select, and what happens with our own personal work schedule. Of course, my kids are grown up, but I have 11 grandkids and they're all making this decision. So it's kind of mind-boggling, and I get that. Now, some are in Islamic schools making a decision, Some are in public school making a decision. A couple of them are in the college situation where do we go to campus? Do we not? So it's huge. I get it. But I want you all to maybe take a sheet of paper and make a couple columns and think about pros and cons. It's not all bad. It could be very good for you as a family if you can manage it. So the mental health and security, we talk a lot about social emotional learning. And right now, when children hear so much of what they hear, it makes them very insecure. When they know everything that you're dealing with, it makes them more insecure. They don't need to know everything that we're thinking and back and forth, our decision making process, because it can be frightening for them as well. And then finally, the spiritual well being, which honestly, we started with it at the top, then we moved it down so we could think. You know, a lot of us think, you know, academic is first, but here's the silver lining. If you're going to be home with your kids and you're going to pray together, you've already been doing it perhaps, you're going to do things differently. You know, stopping the online learning for prayer time together, giving the azan, doing these things, making sure that we start our day with the recitation and reading of some Quran. All these things are opportunities that might not have been so easy to implement into your situation before. I call it the rat race. I was texting with my kids, my grown-up kids, and I was saying, you know, the one thing that's different is that I'm not so much in the same rat race. I can actually pay attention. Now, don't let me shock you here, but you can actually pay attention to the leftover that's in the refrigerator and make sure to eat it because life has slowed down. So if you experience that, then I think we want to say to ourselves, this is a blessing. Let's try and think about it differently. So as we go through the presentation, we'll try and bring you back to that concept of, you know, slowing down a little bit and focusing a little bit more on relationships and spiritual well-being and generations within the family. So I think we're ready for next slide. So what are some of those options if you're thinking about the online program? Well, there's synchronous and asynchronous. So there's real time where the teacher's there and everyone's there together. And we've been doing that with Zoom. And then there's asynchronous where students go into a course and they do their coursework without anyone actually looking. So real time and anytime learning. There's secular, the public schools versus the Islamic schools. There's an awareness of the learning option that fits your child's learning needs. So not everyone has special needs, but even average learners or even, you know, the very capable learner needs certain situations in their life for them to flourish. Some families are saying their children didn't fare well in online learning. And maybe it was how they started it out. I don't really know. But there's one more. There's free versus paid programs. Are we choosing between the public school, which is free, and an Islamic school or a private school? That's one of the considerations. So I know that no matter which one of these programs that we're going to consider, we're going to want to be sure that there's quality in there. And we're going to want to be serious about what that means. So you see here now a young man with the screen, and this is anytime. So he's turning on the computer, going to his curriculum. You know, we're hoping that he has quality curriculum and quality teachers. We're hoping that your students are in a high level of engagement so that they don't have time to scroll around and be in other places. We're hoping that they get good feedback and that there's good progress monitoring. But when students are left in a situation that they're not that familiar with, there's a lot, and we're going to go into it in a little bit, a lot that students need help with, you know, their executive functioning, their decision making, their use of time, and we're going to look at that. But you know, with anytime learning, it's really reliant, heavily reliant upon parents paying close attention to how the computer is being used. So feedback will come from the teacher, and hopefully you'll have a good, you know, line of communication between you and your teachers. But students can complete the work at any time. Some of it might not be on the screen, but it will require teachers to know, or parents to know, what teachers are really asking of students and how they're utilizing that, not only the device, but also the material. And then there's synchronous. So that's real time. Now you have all those students on the screen and they're smiling and talking, and they may be muted like we are. Some of us are muted. They are still communicating. There's more engagement with the teacher. The teacher's, you know, making sure that everyone is on the screen, that the camera is on, that the headphones are good so that the student can hear. They see the teacher's facial expressions. They, you know, get to go in breakout rooms. They get to collaborate with their students, see other students and collaborate on assignments. And there are other opportunities for feedback here because they're actually talking to one another. They're actually talking, you know, to the teacher. But that's not to say that they're not also chatting in the chat box, or, you know, saying or doing things in the small groups that you're not quite sure or not quite aware of, you know, what might exactly be happening. So we want to understand the real time and the anytime, as well as what we understand about if our students go into school, how much attention are they really getting if they're going to school, but they're half of their class is there and the other half of their class is here online watching into the classroom. So they have some synchronization between half of the students and the other half. Now, maybe everyone in your school district is making a choice. It's either or, but that's something we can talk about in the Q&A. I think the next slide would be some of the dangers. What is it here?
I think it just on the chat, Dr. Seema, that they wrote back, Sister Mariam, I think wrote that the virtual public school will not have synchronous on a daily basis. They will have scheduled meetings with some scheduled meetings with their teacher. So it's not going to be synchronous on a regular basis. So that's an important consideration. Okay, Jazakallah khair. So now this is one of the important points where, you know, we say there's a lot of reflection. You know, this COVID situation has made everybody move into a kind of a framework of reflecting on life and everything about life, and you know, how are we raising our kids? And I think this is where this question comes. And I think you know, as a father of 4 children, Dr. Seema has 8, mashallah. We've all, you know, been through a process of raising young kids up through teenagers and beyond. And, you know, there's a phrase that says in America, we say that you are what you eat. And a lot of people are very focused on diet and what am I eating? What we want to help bring attention to as a consideration is also, we shouldn't just be thinking about what we read. We should be thinking of what we eat. We should be thinking about what we read as well. You are what you read. You are what you watch. You are what you listen to. You are your worldview and your identity and your values are impacted by the curriculum that you are constantly exposed to. And you're talking about 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for as many years as students are in school. So it's important to think about as the ICBCS community that you're a part of. All of you have these goals of raising children with Islamic values, and you also want a high quality education. How do we give them an environment that continually motivates them, inspires them, but also does not have these, you know, negative consequences where students, you know, we hear so many stories now, as you may have heard, about young people who are from Muslim families, practicing Muslim families, who are really having a lot of challenges with their faith and their identity as Muslims. And so these are some of the challenges that we sometimes may not think about, but this is a great time to have that conversation and that reflection. When a curriculum that is generally present in a secular environment, the these are some of those consequences. Immorality is being normalized. We have, the absence of God in Allah in any part of the curriculum, and then you have students who are as minorities in a very unique, place in a popular culture where a lot of what their values and practices don't necessarily align with popular culture. There can be a lot of negative impact on self-esteem, which is why we want to bring attention to the importance of the Islamic values. And as Dr. Seema said, a lot of families experienced many unique benefits spending more time together. There were also challenges, but there were opportunities to actually sit and talk like never before, to pray together like never before. So what I want to raise attention to is the importance of the Islamic values, the idea of having content and curriculum that is integrated and that's supporting of Islamic values. Just a quick example, the average text that is a classical text that students are forced to read in their middle school years and beyond, the most common topics are infidelity and actually now the topics are changing into different orientations and things like that. But infidelity is one of the major topics. And then in order to help students understand human experience, there are a lot of very challenging subject matter that students they have to read about and actually go through this process of imagining scenes and scenarios in great graphic detail, which can be very damaging to a young Muslim who's trying to understand who he or she is, especially in the secondary time, a secondary phase of development, the 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and 9th grade. And so again, I just wanted to, when we think about our students, whether they are going on site to a public school, we want to think about the importance of having connection to other Muslims, the importance of having values and ideas that are embedded in a curriculum. But if they are going to be online, as parents, we're going to have to think about what are the interactions that they're having online, which are beyond the classroom. What are those conversations going to be like? And are they with Muslims or with non-Muslims? And even if they're with Muslims, what is the nature of those interactions? So those values that we are all prioritizing have to be at the top of our minds when we think about the schooling that our children are going through, how they're spending the most of their time, what are they spending most of the time reading and talking about.
So the parent mindset is going to be paramount. And it is anyway. One of my favorite lines over the many years that I've been involved in raising children and making choices between public and private Islamic schools, for example. And I sent my students, my children, to public school, and private Islamic school, and also homeschooled one. So what is our mindset? We're the resource provider, so we have to make sure that we get a good Wi-Fi speed, a good headset, other good supplies, the digital device. Who's got the password? Who's watching how it's used? Instructional support. Are we getting the parent summary? Are we signing in, or are we thinking, oh, that doesn't matter? Oh, well. Now, schools may even say to you, okay, your kids are online and they're going to watch a little more, they're going to do a little more game playing, or they're going to do a little more, Netflix on the device or YouTube on the device. And they'll tell you, these are strange times. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Well, I think the mindset for parents is in our instructional support and in our infinite wisdom is we're going to have to figure that part out and make that choice, for ourselves. So we need to know what's happening with our child in classes and get those notifications and go in and see those grades. And are there things missing? Last term in Chicago anyway, and most of the Illinois area, they said grades were not going to count and everyone would get the same grade they got before. I don't think that's the case this time, or at least it's not in Illinois. And there should be accountability. So it's going to be different. And we're going to need to know whether students turn things in or not. So the third item here is the supervision. And I kind of started with that one, saying that the screen time and what it's being used for before and after class. We've heard students say, but mom, I'm just working on my school stuff. I'm supposed to find this and do that. And if the mom doesn't know and the dad doesn't know and the child is stretching the truth a little bit, then you find yourself in an issue. So what's happening before and after class? And what are the filters that you can put on your devices? There are filters. There are things that you can, use to monitor what's happening. So I think the next one is the workstation. We should always have had places for students to do their work. I used to use a small desk for my little kids, and then I would ask them to use the dining room table or kitchen table. But it's a little more complicated when there's a device and a printer and connection to the internet. But we need this quiet and distraction-free place for students to do their work. We need some kind of a desk. We even recommend these days that we try the standing desk versus the sitting desk. And certainly, not lying around, lounging with the computer and the device. And there are other school supplies, that students will still need. We need good light, and natural lighting is important, and it's good. We also need the proper keyboard and the keyboard setup and good posture. We can hurt ourselves by not being seated properly and long periods of time. I notice it if I stay in my chair too long. What happens to my feet? They haven't moved. They need to move. It's just like we know we should walk places instead of drive every place. We need to move around, standing up every hour. We need a clock and a timer so that we can help students with their executive functioning. The students realize that if they're going to be online, they're going to need to be a self-starter too. They have to know that it takes me 5 minutes to get started and 10 minutes to really get into it. And by that time I'm bored and I quit. And I spent 15 minutes and I got nothing done. So an analysis of that is important. The headset with the microphone, if they're going to use we just read in the chat that maybe you're not going to do that. But it's just one more item to make sure that engagement is clear and focused. So the workstation is an important piece. I think the next one is schooling options. So the next slide after that. Do we have choices beyond the one that the school gave you? So we understand that the public school gave you the option of going in or going online. Is that still the best thing for you? Are you happy with that? There are other options. There are other things going on that lots of people are considering. I know I surprised myself when I homeschooled my youngest. He's now well into his career, but there's K-12 that's an online school, Calvert and Keystone. They're there all the time. They've done online learning regularly. There's Educare and Edgenuity, sorry. And there are some others. And there's Legacy, International Online High School. That's an Islamic school with an Islamic worldview. We'll hear a little more about it. And then there are other online Islamic schools. So, we're not really going to say today that we're stuck with whatever the public school is telling us. I think we can make considerations. Even some parents I know who have their children in Islamic school felt that the Islamic school didn't have a very well-defined stay home and learn option. And so some families decided that this year they would just homeschool their kids. And when this pandemic is over, they would take a look again at where they needed to go. Because in some cases, parents are having to take 2 children on Monday and Wednesday and other 2 children on Tuesday and Thursday. And as I said in the very first slide, there is an important value to be placed on the family stability. And so parents should pull back and look at their own personal situation, their family, as well as each child's best learning scenario, and not put anybody through individually or as a family any undue stress that could have been avoided. This is stressful time as it is, so we should really, try to take account of all the things that we're faced with and make the best choice that we can. Next slide. What is it here?
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Seema.
Yes.
So as Dr. Seema mentioned, we were talking about the options that are available. We wanted to just share with you just a few minutes about this other option that a lot of Muslim families may not know about, called Legacy International Online High School. And the co-founders of this project have had kids in public school, private school, Islamic school, and homeschool. And basically, we're looking for an alternative model for educating their children. How can you have our children, attend a rigorous college preparatory, education that gets them ready for a career and getting into college, and at the same time, how can we strengthen their identity and really help them to have this confidence and faith in the yaqeen, in their religion and their faith, and to support their development of their worldview, their Islamic worldview based on the Quran and the Sunnah. And so way before COVID, a couple of years before COVID, alhamdulillah, the goal was to use an online platform to bring together some of the best educators, actually not just in one state, but actually in the world. And so alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guided this team to really get a team of folks who have dedicated their lives. Most of the curriculum team dedicated more than 20, 30 years of their lives to the work of Islamic education, all having PhDs in education. And we also use that online model to bring the top talent. So every single teacher in the school has a master's in education or a PhD, and they're specialists in their subject area. So using that model, this new online school, which started again way before COVID, wanted to offer the Muslim families an opportunity to have really highly qualified teachers. But what's unique was this group of teachers working with the curriculum team wanted to integrate the Islamic worldview, those Islamic values, throughout all of the curricula. So, for example, a lot of times in history, in the United States of America, most people study what we call Planet America. It's a very Eurocentric, ethnocentric version of history that leaves out what's going on in most of the world, and also especially what Muslims have contributed to civilization and to humanity, whether in the field of sciences or anything else. And so in this curriculum, there would be special emphasis placed on understanding the Islamic contributions throughout history and in science and in all of these different areas, mathematics and beyond. In addition, there's a strong focus on relationship building and creating an online community. Dr. Seema talked about socio-emotional learning. The vision of cultivating compassionate global leaders through this program was to really emphasize to students that the fruit of Islam is not really just gaining knowledge, but actually becoming a mercy to humanity. And so there's a strong emphasis on the holistic development of our students and holistic development, and also building their socio-emotional learning capacities like empathy and compassion. But the idea here is that families that were, sorry.
Well, that's very beautiful.
I don't think we have time for this video, so I'm going to just jump to the end here. The idea with this program that is a unique one that came again before COVID was to have teachers who are really qualified in their subject areas, who then become really competent and proficient using education technology to engage students, build relationships, and focus on infusing the Islamic worldview to create another generation of Muslim leaders who are very proud and confident in their deen, but they have the intellectual skills, the communication skills, oral and written, to be able to articulate on behalf of the Islam. And most importantly, that when they move into their high school and college years, that they have that worldview, that that the strong worldview and the strong foundation and the skills that they need to not only deconstruct a lot of the ideological challenges that they're going to face, but to be able to then, not, but to articulate on behalf of Islam in the face of these ideological challenges. And I'm going to close with that and just go back again to the slide by just saying that we have a lot of wonderful activists across the country who have invested into this program personally. Like, so Dr. Altaf has his own children in the program. One of the inspirations behind this program, specifically in the science curriculum, is the former rector of the Islamic University of Malaysia, Dr. Kamal Hassan. And then a local favorite for Texas folks, especially, is Sheikh Abdul Nasser Jangda, who helped us in a lot of our thinking for this program, alhamdulillah. With that being said, I will close because I know that we're out of time, but we wanted to just give an opportunity for families during this pandemic to really reflect on how you are going to create that environment that will continually motivate and inspire your children to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be connected to their Islamic values, at the same time while trying to get a quality academic education. And so we have a lot of considerations that may or other points that we can share here, but we're going to, I think, open it up for Q&A at the direction of the hosts. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khair for the presentation. We have a couple questions that were submitted in advance. If you're attending our Zoom meeting right now, you're welcome to either raise your hand also and ask a question, or type your question into the chat box. The first question was submitted in advance. It says, my kids wanted to go back to school and see their friends, but we decided not to send them in person. How should I explain our decision to them? Our panelists, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think I can start. I'm sure Brother has good ideas as well. I think that one thing we don't know is their age. So the age of the students make a huge impact on how we handle that question, because you can hit the grades of middle grades and high school and discover that there's rebellion or resentment for parents' decision-making, or the process, or the lack of involvement of parents with students, or or too much involvement, and sometimes even letting students make the decision. So that matters. If they're young children, I don't think we need to involve them as much. We need to be excited about the decision. We need to, give them reason to believe that what we're saying is best for them, and that this is a good thing. I spoke to someone yesterday who made the homeschooling decision, not with the school, but on their own. And their kids are 4th and 5th, and they have decided, and they have slightly involved the kids, but now the kids are starting right away and getting excited, thinking they can make up the months they missed and start to read some, and then plan for the grades that they're going into in September, and make some changes, and they're going to let the kids make some of the decisions. So is there anything in this decision that students can weigh in on? If there's something that they can weigh in on, then it's helpful. If the decision is already made, then how can you excite them? What are some incentives? What are some things that you can, I don't mean to say bribe, but I use it because people understand it immediately. But it's child psychology. It's helping them understand without making them upset. Friends are important. How will you engage with friends? Will you put the kids on the computer and do Zoom with friends? Will you let the kids watch something on Zoom together so that they can laugh and talk while they're watching it together? What's a goal that you could have? Could you put Zoom on and have a balloon blowing contest? Both families get a bunch of balloons. Could they measure the balloons and see who got the biggest balloon in 30 seconds? What could you do so that the students could be engaged with their friends? Because we do know that friends are important. Those are some thoughts.
And I have nothing to add to that. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Seema. You got it covered, mashallah.
Jazakallah khair. All right, the next question. The number of local cases may rise and fall throughout the year. What advice do you have in dealing with constant changes between online and in person that may end up happening over the year?
Interesting question. I'm the chair of the Islamic School League of America. And last spring, I said to a large group, we meet all the time. We're on WhatsApp groups. We have an IECN listserv. And I said to the educators, you have a choice here. Let's forget about what we think we want to do. And let's do what we think we should do. Just get online and be great at it. You know, so I think, you know, there are lots of ways that that you can go. Read me that the little last part of that question again.
What advice do you have in dealing with constant changes between online and in person that may end up happening?
So the point was that, you know, then you wouldn't be able to have to worry so much about changes, make decisions for 10 weeks. Now we're going to have changes all the time if we're going to be face to face. We could have made stability if we'd have stayed out. So I think parents would be, you know, I think it would be good for parents to stay out. And then if other people get out because there are cases that come up, they'll just be making the change, but you'll still have stability. So that's one thing. Going back and forth is what I said earlier about the instability of the family. I would tackle this beast now and say, if parents have to work, I'm full-time, I'm a professor. All my classes went online. I'm not driving anymore. There are different things that happen that are an advantage, but it just works out that my family's not juggling that piece. But if you're juggling your job, a spouse's job, and your kids, put it out on paper and try to limit the numbers of changes that you could be faced with. Limit it from now, which is why I said to the ISLA and the Islamic school leaders, limit it from now, cut your losses, and try to have some management ability over your family's life now. And you will be better off in the long run. Because I think, you know, they've talked about, it's a nightmare if I were to start to say it. If one teacher has to be quarantined, the whole class has to be quarantined. Probably the neighboring teacher and the neighboring class and the people in the office have to be quarantined. And that's 14 days. So now when we come back, what's going to happen then? Somebody else is going to have been exposed. It's very, very challenging. It's political too, so.
So just to reiterate, Dr. Seema, what I hear you're suggesting is, we're, again, focusing on stability and consistency. Consistency and stability are so critical for our children.
Yes.
Even though they may have they feel like there's some benefit in going in and seeing their friends and being online. What you hear from Dr. Seema saying is, it may be better to say, hey, you know what, for the first 9 weeks or for this first semester, we're just going to have one plan online, and let's see how things go, and then we can move from there.
And don't forget to involve the students in something that's social and fun, because we also don't want to get them so down that they become, almost depressed from being, there's a lot of depression going on because of this. And we want to take care of we had it on that first list, the mental well-being. We don't realize how important the spiritual part takes care of the mental well-being. You know, the moment you start reading Quran and read it every single morning before you do anything else, when you realize later, oh, I think I forgot, you realize your day is not as good, or things are not going right, and this is a perfect time to lay this out for students and do the recitation, do the things with excitement. You know, I have a lovely activity that I do with Sunday school kids. I'm a principal of an Islamic Sunday school. And my lovely activity, and we were about to do it when COVID happened the second time, we make soup out of ingredients that are found in the Quran. So we have lentils, we have pomegranate, we have squash, only that's not the word it's used, but remember that there's pumpkin and other words, but it's still that type of plant, and lentils and different things, and meat, you know. And so what we needed that we didn't find, and the kids investigated, was they didn't find salt and they didn't find pepper. We said, okay, you can use salt and pepper, and only make the soup from things that you find listed in the Quran. So get a good index, and then start to figure out this activity. And so we had 6 different kinds of soup, because teachers took their class and made that one kind. And we had an awesome activity, and the children realized indirectly that the Quran is not an outdated, antiquated, old book. It's something for my life, and God gave me all these things. So there are many activities like that, planting and seeds. How do roots know to go down, and leaves and stems know to go up? You know, great activity. Put some seeds in a baggie and tape it to the window, and the roots will go down and the stem will go up. Turn it upside down tomorrow and confuse it, and it will figure it out and go again. So kids can see that. So makerspace, look into makerspace. If you're home with your kids and things are a little boring, you got cabin fever, there's a whole lot of other together activities that we can do that are just down the path of Islam, inshallah.
Thank you for those ideas. Those were excellent. All right, I'd like to invite our attendees now. If you have a question or something that you would like to share, if you'd like to go ahead and raise your hand, or enter it in the chat. Alrighty. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to say or to ask at this time? We're going to go ahead and check our YouTube just to make sure we didn't have any questions submitted from there. Okay, so our speakers, I'd like you to go ahead if you have any closing remarks that you'd like to make and share with our community at this time.
Would you like to start? I would just encourage you to be as upbeat as you can with your kids, as positive as you possibly can with your kids. Read with them, talk with them, get to know them. It's a real blessing to have children, and it's a real blessing to have enough time to spend with them. And I know you know this already, but I've had a few opportunities, particularly I'll remind myself of one in Sunday school where we had a big problem with a teenage boy who had a girlfriend, and he was going out the window to visit her at night. And the parents got wind of it, and then we had a conference. And it wasn't a very pretty conference, you know, and the parents were saying, where did we go wrong? And I doubt if they went wrong. Things just happened. But fast forward 10 years later, and this young man is so happy. He remembers that conference, that discussion, with a lot of pleasure. He's very sincerely thankful that there was a strictness. There was pulling back and saying, wait, that's not the Islamic way. So, you know, carefully work with your children through the ages that they are now, because this has never happened before. And I suspect that, like, I have a lot of extra time, your children also have a lot of extra time. And they might find friends that aren't the best for them that are online, or even friends that are getting frustrated that they knew before. But friends grow up and get involved in different things. So just building that relationship with your kids at this time is really a special opportunity. So that's what I would say in closing is treasure this, you know, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let you down.
Dr. Sim, we actually have two new questions popping over here that are probably important. And I'll give you first dibs on them, inshallah. The first one is it possible to homeschool if I didn't grow up here and not familiar with the curriculum and education system used by my kids?
It certainly is. There are lots of options where school programs are available to you, but there are also curriculum that's available to you from your district or your state. The parent that I was talking to yesterday emailed me in the night and said, this is what I found on the school district website. This looks like a lot of fun, you know, and she was getting excited about what she had made the decision to do. So making the choice, if you can teach the subjects between you and your spouse or an uncle or someone, an aunt, a cousin, can help, can support, you can, you need to check in your state. Like in Illinois, there's no signing up or informing the state. You can simply make the decision to homeschool. But in some states, you have to register that with the state that you're homeschooling. And once you do that, they don't, you know, ask for much. There are some states that might ask you to test your children at the end of the year. Lots of children go through school and get behind. If your students get a little bit behind, it wouldn't be the end of the world as long as they're academically working and flourishing in some areas. But I think also that you have with the internet a lot of opportunity. So I would avail myself of those opportunities, even if it's individuals. You can find tutors that could, you know, tutor a high schooler in science, a high schooler in math. Or you could go to a regular program. We had some on the slide. We said Calvert, Keystone, some K-12, I think was one of them. And then Legacy High School is 6th grade through 10th grade. And the students are meeting the teachers face to face in that program. So yeah, it's doable, and you might have some challenges. And it would depend on how many students that you're going to homeschool. That makes a difference. It's kind of hard to homeschool one. A little easier to have more than one, because then there's activity between the students.
That's actually a perfect transition. That's a perfect transition to the second question, which was, do you have any tips on how to help manage the needs of multiple kids who are all learning online? So I added this one point here in case anyone didn't read the chat, that, you know, parents don't necessarily have to feel like, you know, they have to teach their children anything actually. So it might seem like, okay, well, I'm not familiar with the system here, you know, there's no way I can homeschool. But as Dr. Seema mentioned, you know, it's probably easier to have access to programs and resources now than it maybe almost ever was. There's so much available. There's already fixed set, like it'll give you instructions on, you know, it has modules, things set up. So students really are very much self-paced, but parents have to have the right mindset about being there to set up their station, set up their schedule, and monitor that progress of their students and provide them that, you know, that attention and the supervision. So definitely it's doable. I agree with Dr. Seema. But with the second issue related to multiple children, as Dr. Seema said, there's benefits and challenges with that, right? So you can have opportunity to do some things together, but it really, I would have to say, it's very important that the there's like, you have to be like a good project manager in that sense, right? So you've got each of your kids, and they've got their workstations, but they're in a place that you are able to manage them and supervise them, and there has to be time allotted for each of them. I think that we call it in our house, we call it just us time, and in the just us time, there's time that I have with each of my kids, and that's daily, that where I check in and I'm looking at whether it's academic, I'm looking at just how you're doing. I'm looking at a 5 to 10 minute check-in. Of course, some of my kids are older now, so that's less time. The younger they are, the more time. But there's an opportunity to check in and see how things are going with their overall progress. What supports do they need? Of course, that can turn into supporting them in tutoring, or how to turn this in, or find this resource. But I just want to emphasize the point on making set time, whether it's 30-minute slot or 1 minute, 1 hour slot, whatever you can afford with each of the children who are going to be online. But the setup is the key piece.
And you need a calendar, and you need an assignment notebook and a goal and a plan. If you're going to homeschool children, then you want to say, okay, what's the starting time? You want to vote on that? Okay, if we vote on that, then that's the way it is for the next 10 weeks or for the entire school year. If we decided on 7:30 in the morning, we stick to it. So what's that mean? You come to your school table or desk at that time to get started. And you should have your hair combed and your teeth brushed and your prayer done and your breakfast and all the things that a good student would have done before going to school. So you can't be in the bed under the covers and somebody has to keep dragging you out. You have responsibilities. So maybe we need a checklist so we can keep track of the expectations. You don't have to fill out the checklist if they are doing the, things responsibly. But, take a little caution so that you're clear. I don't know how to play basketball if you don't tell me what the rules are. If you change the game, I won't know. So we have to tell our students what's the rule going to be. How are the things going to be set up? So we have this parameter, and I'll stay in it because I know. But if I don't see that line, I'll go everywhere because you didn't say anything I don't know. So a calendar, how many days are we going to do this? 5 days a week? Saturday, Sunday off? Is there another day off? Is 9:30 better? And I'll tell you, I have experience many years in 6th grade and middle grades and elementary. My average class size was 38. I sometimes had 43. Yeah, that was a long time ago before unions were very effective, okay? It takes a lot less time to educate 1 or 2 children and teach them well than it does to have 20 or 25 in the classroom. So chances are you're going to have some extra time on your hands. You're not driving them to school. You're not waiting for them to, organize their bags and you're not having the same clothes issues. So that 4-hour window of school should be more simply negotiated. Is it from 10 to 2 or 9 to 1? And they should be engaged in that period of time. There should be books being read and things going, I remember when my 6th grade homeschooled child said, I'm reading Da Vinci Code. He would go to the library all the time. He was too young to read Da Vinci Code, but he was reading it. And when he finished, he wanted to go to the Art Institute. And I thought to myself, 6th graders don't like Art Institute. I taught 6th grade for many years, but he wanted to. And I thought, well, he won't stay very long because he's a 6th grader. But see, his interests were different. When you confine things and you manage your student in your home and you have the curriculum, your family's curriculum, then you're the leader and you have a lot more to manage to mold your family. So we spent the entire day in the Art Institute, except we ran over and got lunch quickly because that was an interest he had. He also didn't have the peer pressure of which shoes he had to buy. because his role models were his brothers, and they were wearing something that looked nice for a, you know, a newlywed man, you know, a 25 something, you know, and here's my 13-year-old wearing shoes like his brothers, but that was his peer at the time. Different than school kids get so many things from their parents because we have to have it, we have to have it. These things change when you manage your home curriculum. And you'll see a very big difference in your students and your children. Did we answer the question? All over the, I love stories.
Yeah, that's the summary. Yeah, summary was, you know, collaboratively developed schedule and norms and
Yeah.
rules, and then making sure that there's good supervision, individualized time with each of the children. And then if you have free time, invest in that relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Jazakallah khair. Brother Zahir, did you have any closing remarks?
I think we're good. Jazakallah khair. Dr. Seema did a great job closing.
Awesome. All right, Jazakallah khair. We appreciate you guys investing your time and sharing your thoughts with us and some different resources that are out there. Inshallah, we pray that we all have guidance and safety this year. And I hope everybody takes care. All right. Assalamu
Jazakallah
alaikum.
khairan. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.